Thousands of workers at the national laboratories are slated to be furloughed in the next week and a half or so, and work by more than 200 companies that contract with Los Alamos National Laboratories has been halted. Meanwhile, a national trade group says the shutdown is paralyzing the retail trade as consumer spending plummets, of course. Now, this shutdown promises to be especially hard in New Mexico, where so much of our economy depends on the federal government. So joining us to talk about this and other news of the week, one of our line regulars, Rob Nicoleski of the New Mexico Watchdog. You had a solid week this week, dude. That was good reporting. And from New Mexico In Depth, Executive Director, our friend Tripp Jennings is back, returning to the line this week. We also welcome former State Senator Dee Dee Feldman. She's here. And another returning line guest, Rachel Sams. She's Managing Editor of the Albuquerque Business First. Rachel, let me start with you. Your paper has been doing some very good coverage of what's going on. Dan Mayfield did a great piece, and Dennis Domzalski had some good work this week as well. In your seat as editor, the overall sense of things, let's start there. Your bead, your gut take on what you're hearing from business owners and others about what this could possibly mean, a shutdown.
It's hard to overstate the impact of a government shutdown in New Mexico.
Right. Over
a third of our state GDP comes from federal spending of the labs, the bases, different kinds. And so now with this latest news that that the labs, which employ about 18,000 people in New Mexico together, are most likely going to be furloughing many of those employees. Those are people who are going to be facing really difficult decisions about where to spend their money, whether they can spend their money. And it's happening at a time when many of them have already been faced with those decisions. The federal budget has been undergoing cuts for quite some time, and it's already had a pretty big impact here, especially up in Los Alamos. As long ago as last year, Los Alamos County had to cut its budget by 10% because of the lack of revenue that was coming in as cuts at the labs and cuts of contractors hit home. So New Mexico has really been struggling, especially Albuquerque, to come out of the recession. And this is just really coming at a time where we're already feeling that struggle.
Sure, and it's already the stuff October 1st, Rob, with the early furloughs, or what do you want to call that first wave. And in your reporting this week, you had to take on the amount of civilian personnel that have already been let go, or not let go, but furloughed. Right, in White Sands and other places. So.
All the military bases, we're talking about thousands of 1,000 people at Kirtland, 400 people at Cannon Air Force Base outside Clovis. So yeah, just as Rachel said, New Mexico, I guess it begs the question, should we have a more diversified economy? But that's maybe for another day.
Right.
But we're talking about now.
It's a conversation started, though, isn't it?
We're talking about right now, and so New Mexico is definitely hurting.
Yeah. Your sense of things as well, going beyond where we are now to the 18th for Lanel and the 21st for Sandia. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say because we're taping this on Thursday, and there's plenty of moving pieces. Maybe something can get done. It kind of reminds me back in my previous life as a sports anchor. This is back in the late 90s. The NBA was on the verge of a strike.
Right.
And I remember being on national television. Had a chance to be on national TV, and the anchor asked me, "Do you think these guys are going to go on strike?" And I said, "You know what? There's so much money involved. The players have, make so much money. The owners have so much money. I can't believe they would do this."
Right.
But they did.
Right.
So in regards to this shutdown, I would think that things will get solved by the 18th, but I'm smart enough not to bet on that.
It's an apt analogy, that sports thing, because Senator, it's interesting. Rachel and I were talking a little bit earlier than the taping. I think those two dates are vastly different, the 18th and the 21st, meaning the 18th is right around the time where the debt ceiling deadline is. But the 21st, I mean, something could happen in between the 18th and the 21st to solve this thing once that happens. And it's just a shame that the Lanel people might be sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to happen here. But is there any other way to do this, I suppose?
Well, they're running on fumes right now, and they're running on money left over from last year.
Right.
And I guess we see that Lanel has a different amount of money left over from last year than Sandia. So, I wouldn't make much of the difference between those two dates. I think that it's going to be catastrophic either way. And not just for the people that are furloughed, but for the subcontractors who are already beginning to feel the effects, and the restaurants and all of the businesses in Los Alamos and in Albuquerque, Southeast Heights especially. That's you know, we're starting from a very bad baseline, very bad baseline. And, you know, we've lost overall, I think, 43,000 jobs in New Mexico since 2009. And, you know, and the state employees, which are the other part of that government sector of the economy, they're very demoralized too, because their pensions are at risk, their health care is at risk, the people who retire early, their positions are not being filled in the state government. So this federal piece has to be seen in context with the state piece as well. And it is not a pretty picture.
Absolutely. Trip Jennings, good to see you again. Glad you're here. One of the things, as Rob mentioned, as we tape this, things are in flux, so we're not sure what's going on as of Friday night. We can't predict. But one of the issues this week was pay for our people in the federal guarantees. Last Saturday, we had a vote in the Congress that folks would get, federal people would get back pay, but that does not necessarily count our contract folks here. And we've got a letter signed by our delegation to the Department of Energy to get this resolved. And that's a huge what if for people.
It's a huge what if, and I think, you know, as listening to you guys talk, and also paying attention all this week, actually Facebook, Twitter, many of us, you know, have friends all over the place. I think each one of us probably can identify one or two people we know who are affected by this, who are saying, how are we going to pay our bills? There's back pay, but then there's the contracting piece. And you know, economists use that phrase multiplier effect, usually to describe positive things. You can use that for a negative in this sense of, like, if you don't have money, what if you don't pay your mortgage? And if you don't pay your mortgage, do you have the car repair that you can't do?
It's a downward spiral.
It's downward spiral, and this stuff, the money is flowing through the economy, and it's a very serious issue.
Absolutely, especially, Rachel, when you consider, I don't care what strata of life you are, except for the very rich, you're pretty much living paycheck to paycheck in your family. You really are. If you're so-called middle class, that's the deal. You're leveraged like crazy, you've got mortgages, you've got car payments, all kinds of things. But on those contractors in Los Alamos, 290 have been told not to come to work. And again, the conversation we had, that's a closed economy in Los Alamos when you think about it, right? It's one
closed economy in New Mexico.
It's, right, exactly. It's a closed loop, basically. As Los Alamos goes up there, so goes everyone else.
Absolutely.
And so the folks using, you know, getting rid of transuranic waste and all the other stuff that's going on, what is the fallout there? I mean, we're still drought, flood, you know.
Huge.
We have to get these things resolved. Yeah.
It's huge potentially for most of these companies. If they've built their business around this specialized work with the government, who else do you sell transuranic waste processing to? You know, there's not an obvious next step if you lose that business. So it's going to be a real challenge for a lot of people.
And down the line, the WIP folks. See, they're affected. When that work stops, the WIP folks stops too. You know?
And to talk about what Senator Feldman was mentioning about the 18th and the 21st, that may not be that big a difference in time chronologically, because as I've learned from the Los Alamos folks, it would be close of business the 18th, which is a Friday. Monday is the 21st. So there may not be a big difference between the effect on Los Alamos, the effect on Sandia. So it's not much of a ray of light. There's, you know, there's
so one's not showing up on Monday morning, the other's not showing up Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure in Sandia if it's don't come into work first thing on the 21st Monday morning, but I do know that at Los Alamos it's the close. They're going to shut down on the close of the 18th. Friday the 18th.
Do we have a special case to plead in New Mexico with the federal government? This is getting back to the idea of we need to get away from the federal government and start doing our own thing here. But as it stands now, should our delegation, Rob, be fighting tooth and nail for everything? And are exceptions possible? Because I ask that under the context, if you make exceptions, is it a shutdown?
Well,
you know, it just seems odd to me.
On the politics of this, if this thing drags on, the politics are going to be that if I think the Republicans would be smart to pass another one of these piecemeal things in the House saying, we've got to keep WIP and Los Alamos and Sandia open. Then you put the Democrats, Ben Ray Lujan in particular on the House, who's already come out and sent out a news release saying, I'm against piecemeal legislation. Then you're going to put the Democrats on the defensive, and right now The Democrats have Steve Pearce on the defensive because the Republicans, in a lot of people's minds, have this around their neck. So that's going to be an interesting political dynamic if this thing does not get solved by late next week.
That's interesting. In a moment, we're back to talk about athletes, concussions, and a new program launched by UNM and the Mind Research Network.